welcome back to Anime Savants, everyone. Oh yeah, we didn't tell them about the beginning part. Okay, well, this week I am Rika,
This week I am Aqua Poppy, aka Namor, the Submariner.
My God. Oh goodness. I was like, did you want to be someone, Rob? We completely forgot to tell you about this.
You know what? My name is Rob, but today I am Manga Daddy.
Oh, I love it.
Okay.
I love it.
And on that note, let's go ahead and have you introduce yourself. So we clearly have a guest. So let's give it over to Rob. Who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, so what's up, everybody? My name is Rob, aka Father of Vash. I am the host behind Dad Needs to Talk, which is a podcast / YouTube channel where I talk about everything involving fatherhood and family, manga, anime, general TV shows, and sometimes video games. So if you come and check out my stuff, that you pretty much get a mixture of all those things. And of course, by my name, Dad Needs to Talk, it is because, like I said, I am a dad and I have a lot I need to talk about.
I can imagine.
Cool. So then let's just hop into whatever we are going to hop into. So y'all are very familiar with how we do these episodes. It can end up in utter chaos, or, you know, it can end up in a tangent that has almost next to nothing to do with anything that we regularly talk about. But we're going to go ahead and, I guess, start regularly. So, Rob, what shows are you watching from the current fall 2022 anime season?
Yeah, so aside from some of the obvious big ones, of course, I'm watching Bleach, I'm watching Chainsaw Man, still going on with Spy Family, Blue Lock, but some more hidden gems that I've also been watching this season as well. A couple of them, one is a DIY Do-It-Yourself, which is a show about a group of high school girls who basically come together to form a DIY club. So it's just a chill, wholesome slice of life show where these young girls are basically just like building up friendships and literally building other things and stuff as well. Another one, which coincidentally is also another slice of life, is called Bocchi the Rock. And so this is kind of more on the music side of the slice of life, to where the main character, she basically uses music as a way to try to come out of her shell and to make more friends and things of that nature. So that's also been like a very enjoyable and relatable show, because the main character, she is an introvert, so she's very, shy and kind of to herself. She, kind of freaks out whenever she has to deal with big crowds of people and stuff, whatever. And so just watching this character try to take those strides forward of making friends and stuff, but also being like, oh my God, I gotta talk in front of a bunch of people, or I gotta meet this new person, stuff like that. Like I said, it's small things, but something that is very relatable. And so I'm trying to think. So those are a couple of shows I'm watching. I'm trying to think, is there any other? Those are kind of the main ones. There's probably something else as well, but those are kind of like the main ones at the top of my mind right now. And To Your Eternity season 2.
Oh, very nice.
Oh God. Okay.
Very nice.
I'm afraid to start it. I'm fucking afraid to start it. I really am, because I
guess we can roll into sort of our impressions of the week, and then turn over to maybe picking Rob's brain a little bit about his experience in podcasting and other happenings on the internet. So I think the show that probably left the biggest impression on me this week is probably Witch From Mercury.
Oh, absolutely.
Most likely.
I was going to say, I didn't watch Chainsaw Man for this week. I didn't watch, what is it? Weebtacular. I didn't watch Eminence and Shadow.
Oh, Eminence and Shadow.
Oh yeah.
I didn't
AKA Chunibyo Batman.
Chuni Batman. We didn't get a chance. I didn't get a chance to watch it this week, but I did watch Blue Lock and Spy Family.
Yeah.
But yeah, Witch From Mercury is I was not expecting this to be this entertaining for this long. Like, I have to be absolutely 100% honest. I'm actually surprised that it's Gundam High School, but it's really not high school. Like, they're not really doing the high school rigmarole stuff. Like, they did the high school rigmarole, and ChuChu beat the shit out them bitches and was like, it's over. We don't do this. Hands. So, I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying Prospera is going to be a regular thing. Seeing how Prospera and Suletta interact in person is also eye-opening, because it's kind of just like, she does not treat you like a person. She treats you as like a pet or some shit like that, girl. Like, you are not an actual human being to her. That is clear to me, and it's clearly Prospera wants something from Miorine. And it's not Miorine herself. It's something that Miorine can get for her, I'm assuming. So, there was a lot that opened up in this episode. I'm surprised they brought the real Elon into it. I thought he wasn't going to be a very good actor, but Suletta is naive enough to believe it. So, she believed it. But the whole company and the whole mystery and the whole, like, taboo has been Gundam, and now it's out and open. Like, for everybody. So, it's not even... That's what... I remember in the beginning of the season, I was like, how are they going to make more Gundams if Gundams are banned? Here we go. Here we are.
Rob, are you following Witch from Mercury at all?
I'm not caught up. I am... I started it. I think I got to watch just the first couple of episodes before, like I said, I took my little break, and, you know, life took over. But it is very high on my priority list to get back to. And a matter of fact, I might try to knock that out this week, since I got a little bit more free time with majority of the kids being gone for the break. So yeah, that. But I'm enjoying what y'all are saying now. It's just getting me more hype and excited to get back to it, because like I said, I love those first couple episodes, and I've heard nothing but great things every week.
Yeah, I think it's a worthwhile watch. Without diving too deep into some of the specific story points, one of the interesting and maybe like unsettled questions that I had about the series going in was, what purpose did it have to serve, right? Because Gundam is one of those interesting franchises where there's a slice of it for different audiences, and it's sometimes they cross streams, sometimes they don't. So if you're looking at, like, you know, young kids and young adults, it's typically the Build Fighters franchise, which is light on story, big on product placement. Sometimes there's a little bit of investment as far as production value, and if you're like a OG, you know, Gundam head, then it's also sometimes a little bit of a celebration of some of the prior series, because they can work in designs and other things that come from, you know, all this, like a smorgasbord. You kind of pull it all in, and so you'll see, you know, oh, that's from Double O, and that's from Gundam Wing, and that's from the UC series, but it's really aimed at a different audience, and it has a different purpose. Then you've got the mainline UC Gundam, which typically skews more adult. It's more political. Obviously, a lot of the biggest moments in the franchise have come out of all of that sprawling, you know, timeline. But if you ever watch like an individual show, sometimes it's not particularly action heavy. Sometimes it's a lot of talking and world building. So it goes the other way, right? It's not for a 10-year-old. And it may not even really be for like a 20 or a 30-year-old sometimes when I watch it. And then you got like the weird alternative century, which is all over the place. You get like Gundam Age. That one's for definitely aimed at a younger audience, right? It's a little simpler, and it's kind of retelling of the original series. You get something like Iron Blooded Orphans from a couple years ago. Very adult. Like a Yakuza movie, you know, there's all, you know, I could see that, take away the robots, and I could just see, you know, that is just a regular film.
Yeah.
So then you've got Witch from Mercury, which I think Jordan and I have gone back and forth since the prologue, which is their episode 0, where our introduction to the series, post all of just the key art, because I didn't know what to expect. You know, I see a young girl, I see a robot. I'm like, we can go any direction we want with this one. In the prologue, it's a lot of politics. There's a massacre, people getting shot in the face, blood everywhere, horrible scenes, a child singing happy birthday while she murders a bunch of people, and you're like, okay, I'm over here now. I'm in the adult zone. That's where we're gonna be. Then you kind of get the first few episodes like, oh, this is Gundam High School, typical high school shenanigans, but with robots, and the Utena vibes and all the other stuff. It's like, oh, okay, we're touching subjects that are maybe puts us closer to the middle. Maybe we're skewing young again. It's colorful. It's the pastel palette. Yeah. And then like last week, an event happened.
Happy Birthday came back.
Happy Birthday came back in a brutal ass way, and then I watched this week's episode. It's heavy on politics, heavy on corporate systems and other sorts of stuff. And the vibe the whole time that I was getting from it was, we're going to dark places.
Well, to their kudos, I've actually had people who have this is their first Gundam. And they've said, oh, Gundam is like a soap opera, like they talk too much, blah, blah, blah. And I've seen several people say, and some people say to me that this was an episode of only talking and they loved it. Like it was the first time for them watching Gundam for there to be an episode where there's no shooting, no action, no nothing going on. It was all just like dialogue going back and forth. No one even got shot, like with human wise or anything like that. And
nobody got shot. That's
yeah. That's great. And they were completely dialed in. They were just like, this was extremely entertaining. And I'm like, oh wow. So this is actually appealing to audiences that they could not retain before. So that's great because that means we get more in the future automatically. But also it's just but really though, this is the beginning. Like, y'all don't know where we're gonna go. It's gonna get worse. But yeah, that's it.
Yeah, the only plot point that I think is very plays into some of the theory crafting that we've done on the show is the interaction between Miorine and Prospera, Soletta's mom, which we got for the first time directly, kind of one-on-one, because they did meet each other very early in the series, briefly, but it was in the setting of the corporate board. So that was a different scenario. And I'm going to just, in short, say I have betting stock on Prospera and Miorine doing something that sets behind them up Suletta. As a clique. Yeah, behind Suletta. I guess that this might be an angle that they could take in the story to set up maybe like a time skip or something. But
I'm honestly shocked that she literally made up a company in seconds in her mind.
So I think, but doesn't that set it up, right? Because now they have a reason to be collaborating with each other. Yeah. Miorine still wants to get to Earth. She's working in opposition to her father. We got some hints this week about the backstory of why the Delit family, via her dad, doesn't like Gundams, which I'm gonna suppose that her mom died as a result of something to do with a Gundam. I don't know what that is. We don't know. I think it's a nice juxtaposition that we guessed at from the first couple episodes of that alignment and that being the separation that potentially separates two characters, because they hint at it in the opening. You just look at the opening and the ending. It's like, oh, Miorine's behind ice and Soletta's, romantically reaching out to her, but they can't, so something is going to happen that, whatever, we know the deal. So we'll move away from that to something maybe that Rob did have a chance to see. The most recent episode of Bleach, 1,000-Year Blood War, coming off of episode 6, which was the budget dump episode. Yamamoto going ham on what he thought was you watch, and didn't really turn out too well because it was a doppelganger, so he wasted his Bankai like a fool and then got clapped up in the most egregious way in the beginning of this episode. So Rob, what did you feel, if you're up to date on episode 6 and 7? Did you enjoy that? What was your takeaway?
Yes, I 100% love both of those episodes. I've loved this whole season so far in general. So I am somebody who did read the manga, years ago. But, like me and Jordan was talking about before we was recording, how even though I have read it all, that's been so many years ago that it feels like I'm experiencing it for the first time all over again. Especially just because of the fact of like just the way the whole package has been, the visuals, the music, everything top to bottom has just been utterly fantastic, and it honestly makes me feel like I'm back in my youth again. From back in the old days watching Bleach growing up. But it's just like, hey, now they're giving Bleach all the budget, and it feels like we're really getting their Kubo is getting a chance to like really flex and to flesh out a lot of stuff that maybe he didn't get a chance to in the manga and stuff. So, but yeah, both of these episodes have been freaking fantastic. One little like stylized thing that I've always loved about Bleach, and after watching today's episode 7, the way they kind of ended it with that the title card Born, was it Born to Darkness, Born in Darkness? Just the way that whole visually came together and stuff with it in the episode, I was just like, chef's kiss, amazing. But yeah, I've loved all the episodes.
Jordan, I know that the last 2 episodes have done a lot for the style. They definitely got some guest animators in. The music, I think, especially in episode 7, I think actually the most recent one, I was very taken by the themes that they were pulling just from the music side. Even though it may not have been quite as much of a Sakuga fest as episode 6. Actually, maybe I may have enjoyed episode 7 a little bit more, even also as a manga reader who was looking forward to this part. So Jordan, what was your takeaway from those episodes?
My takeaway from 7 was nothing, because I didn't watch that shit.
Yeah, that's right. I know, but you watched 6, though.
Oh, yeah. I did watch 6. I mean, honestly, I was just shocked at episode 6 the entire time, because it's one thing for them to, like, showcase, cool Sakuga. Like, oh, wow, like, this looks amazing. But they literally did it for almost, like, the entirety of the episode. And, like, when you were talking about guest animators, it was clear that different animators were working on different parts of it, especially with all the fire scenes and, like, the different levels of the Bankai. It was obvious that, a lot of work went into it from multiple people. But it was just really insane. Like, I think I said that, like, last week, like, thought I was watching, like, the climax of an anime movie, almost. Where the budget is like, this is the budget. Like, this is the fight. And this isn't the fight. Like, this is the beginning. And I also think it's really, really, really smart of whoever told them to do split cores and cut it up, because it just doesn't make sense. I don't see how they could retain this if they did, like, a straight 24, took a break, and then came back and did another 26 or 27. Like, I don't think they could keep it up. So 12 episodes here, 12 episodes in 3 months, 12 episodes in another 6. But, like, it's perfect. So far, I have not been displeased with a single episode. The only time was at the beginning of episode 3, when they started doing the regular bullshit shonen shit, where they were like, last time on Bleach. It's like, no, we don't need this shit. We don't need this. Like, we know it's been 10 years. Like, let's move it along. So, but now I'm excited to hear the music in 7.
I think because of course this is sort of like the the lowest point that our characters are going to experience in this part of the core. So they really leaned into the more emotional. Like Bleach, and it's like violin accompaniment, and a lot of the themes has always been really cool. I like the remixes that they've produced for this season. I think that they feel bigger. They feel like even in some of the earlier episodes where you got their main battle theme, which I always forget. It's got a generic name and I always forget it, but it's the like. But when you have like 4 violins instead of like the original 2,
a string
and it just
quartet,
and it feels more orchestral and grander. I think that's actually one of the things that the new season has done that has impressed me the most, is that if you read the manga, a lot of the experience of reading something, whether it's a comic or reading a book, is that your brain kind of fills in the gaps. That's part of the enjoyment, is that you get to experience part of it's on the page, part of it's in your head, and that you can make something, you can draw something in a way that feels bigger, even though obviously it's just lines on a page. With anime and movies, sometimes it's harder to do that because you have to fill the whole screen, and sometimes that doesn't leave room for, you know, the audience to like project what else is going on in this scene. But when they do the full pan outs, especially in episode 7, where we get to see sort of the destruction that's been, you know, wrecked on Soul Society, and just piles of bodies and blood everywhere and scenes of people crying and dying and everything else. It's like a war movie. I think that it does a good job of actually filling in that blank space in order to, you know, move the emotional wavelength to something that's, you know, our characters are actually under threat, which is a problem in a shonen when you kind of like run the power scaling into outer space to try to make things feel bleak and desperate, and to be brave enough to kill off major characters, or at least leave the impression that they really could be dead, which is what happens in episode 7. Dude gets sliced in half. I mean, and then blown up. So there's no question in anybody's mind. Okay, like he's gone. All right, dead. So we get all that, but broadly, and maybe Rob, you have a thought about this. Going into this new adaptation, I make no secret that of the big three, the original big three, I was really more in line with Bleach because of my age. Because Bleach visually appealed to, you know, teenagers and, you know, young adults. It had the style. It was edgy in the, not necessarily like the themes, but in the way the characters presented themselves, and the way Kubo drew a lot of those characters to feel like they were adults, or at least teenagers becoming adults. And that was you know, the fashion and everything else was a big part of that. And I always wondered, going into 1,000-Year Blood War, it's a polarizing part of the story, because everyone knows that it's rushed. It was rushed. Everyone knows that it was ended abruptly for a lot of reasons that don't really have anything to do with, you know, necessarily even the qualities of the manga at the time. It was just, you know, other behind the scenes stuff going on. And that meant that there are things that we all want to see that have the possibility of being fleshed out through this adaptation. But from what I've seen so far, it's pretty much stuck to even the pacing of the manga. There's not been a lot of sort of like exposition on some of those emptier bits. And you see it here in the last 3 episodes, where there's a lot of fighting going on that in the manga you get like 2 panels and then it's like a cutaway. And I was like, oh, maybe we could indulge in some of this a little bit. But no, we got a lot of captain fights that really only exist. If you cut all the shots together, it's maybe like 4 shots totaling 2 minutes across like 4 episodes, which leads me to believe that we're probably not going to get too much in the way of expansion of the content. And I don't necessarily know how I feel about that. Not necessarily bad, but
maybe it'll come on the back end.
Maybe.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I'm more in the mind where I think that we will, because at least, and once again, this is kind of just going off of memory from years ago. At least like majority of the holes and problems and stuff that I had with it was more on like the backside.
Yes,
end.
Yeah, I agree.
So I, you know, I think we still might maybe have like a little ways to go before we kind of get like a better idea of yes or no, you know, certain, like you said, like certain things we kind of get filled in and stuff. So because I'm gonna have to go back, because what I was doing those, at least like those first like few episodes, was after the episode I was kind of like going through and just like flipping through the chapters and just kind of like, oh, okay, they are on point with this and this. I haven't done that in the last like 2 or 3 episodes, so I'll definitely be kind of curious just to kind of go back and just make that little comparison, just more so for comparison's sake, just like, okay, you know, okay, yes, they did maybe add an extra thing here or there, or no, it was just 100% beat for beat, you know. So
I think they added a little bit structurally to the Yamamoto fight, and one thing that they do in the anime that was not available to be done in the manga is that they provide short, relevant, maybe like one-shot flashbacks. They don't with no audio, so you kind of just if there's a relevant character or a moment that they'll pull, 2 seconds from a prior season, which is a little jarring because it's in a slightly different style, but they try to put a film grain over it and do other things so that you just get the point that like this connects to a thing that happened in the past, so it's not just ass pulling. Which kind of leads to my other issue is that when all said and done, when Bleach ended, when the manga ended, you kind of ended in a place where Ichigo was like the arch Gary Stu. He was everything. Every powerful entity or bloodline or backstory that existed in the entire canon of Bleach, Ichigo was all of it. And so it's fine. If you want, I mean, it's just a character archetype. Who cares? But you have to. I was wondering, like, how corny are people going to find this to be? Because within the episode 7, we got like the second significant ass pull, at least as far as like power scaling goes, specifically for his character. And I didn't mind it at all. I like the way they sort of use panning shots and a little bit of exposition to explain what happened. But none of that stuff actually happened like on camera. The whole like, oh, you're Ryatsu mixed with whatever, the jailer. And so now you're also, it awakened your Quincy memories. I remember when I read that and I was just like, I narrowed my eyes and I was like, really, Kubo? His mom was a Quincy?
Mom. Yeah.
Oh, okay. But I bought it. I'm not saying that like I reject this story.
I actually had to do a lot to not spoil people on that because I thought that had come into play earlier on. And some people were like, wait, what did you call his mom? And I was like, oops. Sorry.
Same way his dad turned out to also be a Shinigami, but he never gets a fight in the anime. It never actually happens. They just show you him pulling his sword, and then you never see anything.
We never see his Bankai.
Nope.
Anything like that.
No.
Wait,
and again,
was he in the filler arc? Was he?
That's a good question. I have to jog my memory.
I skipped all of the Bleach filler, so I wouldn't know.
I skipped most of them.
Actually, the Bleach filler is why I picked up the manga because I was like,
the early ones I watched because I was just a fan of the show, but the later ones, I was like, come on, I understand why this is happening. Just go on hiatus. Like, what are we doing? So I say all that to mean that I have very strongly positive feelings about this season. I think more or less they're doing what I wish some other shows that have gotten remakes would have done, which is to say, if it's a property like Bleach that is so popular and so ripe for profit because it's been making money, for the last 15 years, hand over fist, even without an anime on TV, then give it the A++ S tier whatever treatment. Go get the best animators. Go put the production budget in because you're gonna make it back. It's not a question of like the show doesn't need much to break even. That's why I was so frustrated with Dragon Ball Super, among other things. Like it's a money printing machine, so make me feel like I'm bathing in that money. All the time and energy we've all put into this series, like throw it back in my face. Try to make other studios jealous, and want to catch up. So. I enjoyed that quite a bit. Jordan, was there what else have we both
Blue Lock was great. Yes. I loved it. Chigiri, demon mode. Like, honestly, really enjoyed that animation, especially
he passed the ball to himself. Yes. Now we're getting into Kuroko no Basuke territory. Before this, I was talking about how grounded this show was, and then this man passed himself the ball on a scoring play too. I was like, all right, fine, whatever.
Yeah,
gotta go fast.
I mean, apparently.
I actually had a moment of like, I don't know where we go in this episode because they did like a top-down shot of Isagi running up to someone, and it was like full 3D, like chunky, and I was like, oh no, did they run out of budget already? Like, what are we doing? And then they quickly showed, they were like, nah, nigga, this is what we're doing this episode. I was like, oh, okay, great. Like, honestly, I almost thought the nigga was going to turn into a JoJo character at one moment. When he was, like, kneeling on the ground with the chains and shit like that. I was like, this is the time where Stan shows up. So. But it was great. That kicking the ball to himself, fucking phenomenal. Like, I don't play sports. And I definitely don't play soccer. So he did that, and I'm even just like,
the physics is not quite on his side.
Yeah, like that's
with
crazy.
That one.
Is it possible if he like kicked it up and it did like an arc, but this nigga just kicked it?
You'd have to,
and was like da 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 da.
I mean, like we're all adults. We've all been through at least high school level math and science, and if you're moving at one speed and then you give something enough force to move it faster than you, then in order to catch up with it, you have to reach the speed of the thing that you just accelerated. So the physics of that don't really work. But visually, when he did kick it forward and is in the air, I said to myself, they're going to have this motherfucker kick his own ball, aren't they? They're really going to do this. Oh, look, yes, they did. I wasn't upset. We need a little bit of magical powers to make this work. Rob, so did you watch the episode? Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah. No.
Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah. No, sorry. No, I was just going to just jokingly say, breaking the sound barrier, just like when he like, it kind of like frozen, like it pushed off. He just, shockwave, just.
Yeah.
And I can't help but think of freaking Sonic, because like when it kind of like did like the little like zoom in on his feet and like how fast they were moving.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like I said, hey, I loved it. It was just like whatever. Sure, anime, let's go.
Yeah. I mean, it was really fun to watch, and I was even surprised by the ending. Not the other team, but the fact that Kuon immediately went and tried to do the exact same thing. I was like, nigga, you didn't even give them a chance to beat your ass. Like, you just went straight back to dirt. Like, wow.
So I'm still of the theory. I mean, they could rehabilitate that character if they wanted to, you know. But what they would need to do is establish that. So his prior implied ability was that he was a strategist, right? He was the one coming up with the plans for the team in order for them to win. You could invert that character and make his, you know, whatever you want to call a special ability, being a cheater, or being someone who's, you know, sneaky, somebody who takes advantage of the rules but does it, you know. So if you want to rehab that character in the way that they do in this series, you could do that. But I still am of the belief that he gets replaced at some point, but I'm not a manga reader, don't know. I always like to pay attention to who is in the openings and the endings to get a feel for what the core cast would be if I don't have that background. And so he doesn't really appear in any of the ending. It's only Bachira, Isagi, and Chigiri
Jr.
And like the
right. Oh right, yeah, the blonde hair guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm assuming that there's something to that, but also obviously there's the rest of their team so far that's there. So I don't know. The other thought that I had around that episode, you mentioned like JoJo and everything else. I think this is the first. This last match was the first time that we kind of got introduced to what I would call like very cartoon characters, at least in terms of their gimmick, as far as how they present. Yeah, right. The whole like the way the speaking mannerisms, and even the way that they're drawn into scenes where they kind of like in a very cartoon sort of way pop into frame and focus, like they're sort of like hiding behind you the whole time to do something weird and creepy.
They give Danganronpa, to be honest. Like,
that's a great call.
In particular, they give very heavy Danganronpa vibes, like especially with their eye, like just their overall like design. I'm just like, this is very specific to me. But I think a lot of artists, they kind of visit that style because maybe they are looking to like evoke that kind of suspense.
Well, it's like a manic and kind of crazy energy,
Yeah.
and it's very easy because in this series they do a lot with eyes and sort of focusing you on weird stuff happening with eyes.
But that was they used the eyes really well because when Isagi was like, "I see it," and they did the eye swap, I was like, "Oh, this shit's good."
And I just want to point out that like look at the even though I'm not complaining, but I was pointing out that this was the first time that they really did something that fully and fundamentally broke the laws of physics in the show. For the most part, if you really want to, now we've added a new superpower. What is Chigiri's power? He can run fast. The other dude, he can jump. Isagi is like very, very good spatial, recognition. Like these are not I can see 10 seconds into the future, or the zone from Kuroko no. Like, it's very mundane kind of stuff. And I imagine that for the most part, even like the twins, it wasn't like they were reading each other's minds. It's just the way they were presented was very like cartoony and over the top. And that was it. Their real ability was just like they could pass to each other very well.
Yeah.
That's really it.
They've been playing together forever. They know exactly how the other one's going to move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So quick little side thing. I just thought about like with talking about the powers and stuff. I don't know why I had this visualization with because we talking about like what's gonna happen with Kuwan and stuff whatever, and also his big thing is that he can jump really high. Like my mind went to like a Avatar Last Airbender thing where what's the main guy Ego.
Dang. I don't know.
Ego, the main guy in blue.
Oh, Ego, the guy in blue, yes.
To where he's like, as your punishment, I'm taking away your jumping.
Yeah, because he's done other weird stuff in some of these games. I would not shock me if in a very direct way that they try to do that somehow via twisting of the rules.
Yeah, I would be surprised.
So I enjoy the episode, and then we got like the cool guy squad and team. Are they Team V? I don't even remember which team they are.
Yes.
Yeah, but either way, sleepy kid who's clearly a genius, guy trying to pretend like he's smarter than he is and misusing words. The cool captain, like we're setting ourselves up for like the showdown. And I think that's interesting, and I always love sports anime because they provide you this opportunity to introduce whole new collections of characters who all have relations with each other already, and regularly keeping it fresh, and their interactions with our team. I like how Isagi kind of did the shonen protagonist thing directly at the end of the episode. Like, he basically gave him the power of, like, I will refute your ideology because soccer is fun! And the other guy's like, I play soccer, but I don't think it's fun. And it's like, all right, well, we know what the moral of this game is going to be.
Move.
Yeah.
Pushed him out the way and told him to move. And that, to me, was the catalyst, because that to me gave me, nigga, don't put your hands on me. What are you doing?
Well, you're going to get that moment where it's like, the other team is finally, at the very end of the game, they're losing. And then the quote from episode 7 is going to come back where Isagi says, he remembers him. He says, is this what it feels like? I'm losing, but I'm still having fun playing soccer. And,
also, question, where'd the extra 3 minutes come from?
I don't know. Usually you can get like, some penalty time added onto a game, but like the way they did it, it was just Ego said you could have 3 extra minutes. Yeah. So it wasn't framed in the context of the way a soccer game, injury time. Yeah, it wasn't framed in the way like a soccer game normally would be, which is like I'm not going to ding it for it, but so far they've been pretty good about like, at the end of the day, introducing you to the actual rules of what soccer is. Now, I would love them to try to explain what offsides to a normie, because that one is always it's super annoying. But
I kind of thought like with him adding the extra time, maybe it was just kind of like a, what, I let the Kuwan thing slide with you switching teams. So here's 3 more minutes. Let's see what y'all do with that extra time.
No, it's totally possible. And again, it's still, this show is absurd. So absurd things can just happen. They don't need to be explained. It doesn't really add anything necessarily to go out of your way to to explain it. I noted that they didn't, so I was just like, oh, okay, whatever. So we already have a system where like you can never play for the national team if you lose this. I mean, you got your 300 best youth prospects. Like, okay, let's say that this all works out. They pick the one, and then he explodes his knee in game 1. You can't get number 2 because he's been banned from playing national soccer for the rest of his life. It doesn't seem like it makes a lot of sense, but I'll let it slide. It's not a big deal. So we've talked about Bleach. We talked about Blue Lock. I think this is kind of the point where we kind of diverge a little bit. I don't know, Jordan, did you watch Spy Family this week?
I did. It was more. It was what it was. Just more like individual vignette things. I'm pretty sure they are. No, they are, because I saw people post like the manga panels. Mm-hmm. I think the funniest part for me was Lloyd coming through the door. And Anya just going, Daddy, kachi chachi kachi kachi ka. He goes, okay.
Yeah, it was literal nonsense. Yeah, like, and he was just like, okay.
Yeah.
No, I had some moments. I think Anya's horrible handwriting, like, I think that gag, which they have not really run to the ground, even though they've brought it up more than once, that like people look at her handwriting and it's like, what the hell is this? But this is like the first time where there was actually something, they built a story around that. My favorite moment was probably her getting coming out of the secret passage at his hospital, and because she was in a rush, because she was in a rush to like look like she'd been doing something, she just dumped everything in the sandbox. And then Lloyd like freaking out because he's like, apparently he actually does know psychology. So he's looking at this and he's like, my God, what I put this poor child through this whole time, her mind is on the verge of collapse. I don't worry, girl. I'll get you whatever you want. You want a toy? You want some ice cream? What can I do? There was a character. Yes, there was a character reveal that'll probably come up in sort of the last couple episodes. Yeah, which I know a little bit about because I was spoiled on. Which I'm excited to see her in the mix now in the story, because she is a character that touches a lot of the let's call it like the husband-wife dynamic that Lloyd and Yor are involved with, but also is involved in like the spy ring stuff. So I enjoyed that, and I think I also enjoyed Lloyd with his coworkers, because up to this point I wasn't sure if like the doctor thing was just a verbal cover and he was outgoing and doing missions, but now it's very clear that he works a full-time job, and that is actually part of the plot to like a backup plan in case things don't work out with the primary operations. So
I'm with you, because how many times have we seen him be like, I'm going to work, and then he's at Anya's school? Mm-hmm. Like, that's happened so many times where I'm just like, that nigga's not working. They keep faking this shit somehow. But they know him. They know all, like, they know it. He actually sees patients and shit. I'm just like, okay.
It does a good job.
It does a good, They're like, you should open your own clinic. Like, okay.
Yeah, he is a true professional.
No, 100%. So yeah,
I enjoyed it. It was fun.
Yeah, fun and light. Nothing crazy. Jordan, is there anything else that I know that you didn't necessarily watch some of the core stuff that we usually talk about, but there's some other things in this last week that you have taken a look at?
I did watch. Wait, did I talk about Dragon Prince? Oh, wait, I didn't talk about Dragon Prince last week, did I?
You recommended it maybe a week or two ago, or maybe you asked if you had recommended it.
Yeah, I think I asked if I had recommended it, but Dragon Prince season 4. I watched that like the week before last. I don't think I talked about it last week that much, and if I did, then I'm gonna cut this part out. So sorry. But Dragon Prince season 4 was actually decent. And when I say decent, it was one of those Dragon Prince seasons where things happen, but like it's not like the climax season. It's like the build-up season. And they've done that before with season 2 of the Dragon Prince. Like season 1 was kind of like our introduction. Season 2 was the build-up. Then season 3 was the climax of that first arc. There are going to be 7 books, and this is season 4. So maybe this next arc will be a 2 season arc, or maybe this will be the beginning of the final stuff. But I just really like the show because the Last Airbender roots really show through, even though it's only one half of the Last Airbender like creators who are like behind it. It just shows the world lore. Every time you learn more about the lore, it's the whole thing just gets better and fucking better and better. They're introducing more of the elements through like different elves and like what those elements can do. You constantly see how dark magic interacts with things and how is it actually like stealing, or can it be used to borrow as opposed to completely like take a life essence from something and kill it? Like, there are just so many options and things to go with, and the characters, they're great. I don't really feel a specific way about any of the characters, but that's just me. I know some people, they got the fandoms, the fan art, the doji,
oh, they do
stuff like that.
Oh, they do.
They love them, yeah. But for me, I really just like the world in Dragon Prince. Like, that's my favorite part about it. Have you seen any of those?
I watched some of the first season,
mm-hmm.
and this is obviously things have evolved with that production.
Yeah.
But I felt at the time that there was like a solid story foundation there. It wasn't necessarily, didn't grip me immediately, and I think that was probably the case for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because what I always hear is, I think maybe they got into season 3 at that point. Oh, you got to go back and watch it. Don't worry about the production in the first season. Not only does that get better, but like it's worthwhile to stick around and learn more. And so if it weren't for some other non-animated things that are taking up my media diet, it would be like whenever I'm scrolling on like Netflix, I'm like, oh yeah, I should get around to like watching that. Speaking of which, like I just got through like all of Abbott Elementary like yesterday because
I've been refusing to watch the second season.
Yeah, so like things like that tend to distract me away from something I have to like read. I like subs, so like it's hard to put on something like that in the background, even though it's like English language, because I want to pay attention to what I'm seeing. Whereas like a sitcom or even a movie, for the most part, I can kind of just let it exist off to the side and not feel like I miss a lot. So that's why I've sort of been holding off on that. Rob, I know that you mentioned that there were some slice of life titles that you are caught up to now and are interested in. You want to talk a little bit about those?
Well, the couple that I mentioned earlier, whatever. I'm for sure like 4 or 5 episodes behind on Bochi, and I'm maybe like an episode or 2 behind on DIY. So I don't really have too much to expand on with those from what I mentioned earlier. Like I said, just a couple, like I said, just very sweet, wholesome shows. Nothing super crazy going on with them, but the best way I can kind of put it with when I'm recommending those is with some of the other crazy high intensity shows like we've talked about, with Bleach and Blue Lock and Chainsawman and all this other stuff, whatever. Those shows have been kind of a nice, calming watch. It's just breaking up the pace throughout the weeks and stuff whenever I do get around to them and stuff. So I don't have too much more to add on to those. Though side tangent, I will say once again, just shout out to you mentioned Abbott Elementary. Love that show. Love it.
So there are some shows that like we don't usually talk about week to week, but I know that I'm keeping up. One of them is Mob Psycho 100, which I think is maybe my favorite season that the show has had.
It looks
and
like
I've liked every season.
Down.
Yeah,
Shit's going crazy.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, there was a character death that I think was very well put together over episodes 4, 5, and 6. So I didn't see it coming. I'm not like a manga reader, and so like the fate of, well, we'll talk about it a little bit. The Dimple's fate, I think, was one of the most well handled and more emotional than I thought I'd be in what is essentially a gag manga.
Yeah.
But in episode 6, they blew out 5 and 6, but more so 6. They blew out the goddamn budget on that one. You got like the Golden Frieza Dimple version, and not just his fight with Mob, which I wouldn't really call it like a fight, because it was mostly just like Mob talking to him and sort of deflecting whatever it was that he was doing. But then him, Dimple versus the ego of the tree, and like it just escalated very quickly, and it was cool. There was a mix of like hand animation and very well done CGI. There's some creepy ass scenes, especially the end when the tree ego seemingly eats him, and it's like Mob is under hypnosis and he's walking away, and you know that like Dimple's projecting something into his head about like how everything's fine, and you know, then it ends with like Mob in bed sad for some reason, and I'm like, that I that's like a hard cut for like a end of a little arc, but I'm now emotionally looking forward to him realizing what happened. You know, and whether that occurs or doesn't occur, that's like a setup for tragedy that the show is very good at sort of pushing under the covers of its comedy and some of its other sort of themes of like friendship and loneliness and everything else. But then when they pull it out, it actually has been earned. And I feel wherever that the end of that story is going to be told, even if it ends in a joke, I think, you know, I'm looking forward to that more than I'm looking forward to some very long running, you know, dramatic storylines from other series that are more well known. And I feel like Mob Psycho has not quite gotten the attention this season that it might have gotten in other seasons, especially
really
because a lot of the major franchises are not phoning it in. Either this year or this season. I mean, like, I'm a One Piece reader, not a watcher, but every time I see a clip from, you know, the current arc that they're doing, I am so impressed that the money is being spent well over there. Same for My Hero, which this is for other people. This is their favorite part of the series, and so they are going all out. There's one particular scene I'm looking forward to in this current season with Hawks, that anyone who knows. I'm excited for that, but I'm not really following My Hero because I kind of know where it's headed. I don't feel the urge like I gotta know where's the story going next. I already know, so I can pick that up a little bit later. And I'm trying to think. The only other thing that I watched this week that stuck out, I didn't fully rewatch it, but I watched like the first half of an older series, Martian Successor Nadesco, which I originally got on VHS, renting it from, you know, shady video stores back in the early 2000s when it was impossible to find like OVAs. And I'm always impressed how what I would call like B tier or even maybe C plus tier shows from that era can hold up pretty well, you know, 20 plus years later. So Martian Successor Nadesco is like a semi post-apocalyptic but also semi parody giant mecha show.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and I like when you look at the character designs and you're like, I've seen some of this stuff copied before, during, and after this series came out. Or you look at the mecha designs, which I thought were really good. I think I'm forgetting off the top of my head who the mecha designer was, but I think they were on not Megazone. No, it was like Dai Cougar or something, like a very well known mecha designer was behind the show. And then when I got through watching like the first 10 episodes, I went back and watched all of Irresponsible Captain Tyler, which when I was growing up was one of my favorite shows. And that's another sort of comedy parody space opera where like it's about sort of a seemingly buffoonish captain who gets drafted into a war and by hook or by crook, mostly like comedic accident, winds up, you know, being the most important, the most interesting man in the universe. And the comedy is still pretty funny, but what I always wish we got more of today were those kinds of like light-hearted but well sketched primary protagonists of the Vash, you know, the Stampede model, where they were good for emotion, they were good for frenetic action, they were good for. Right now we get like a little bit of that, but I don't see characters like that anymore among, you know, popular series at all. It's that sort of outlaw cowboy, but also kind of a dork. Oh, respect. You know, that I feel like that archetype fell away maybe once Outlaw Star got it out of the zeitgeist, I think that was like the last. You know what I mean?
But
Like
we
Gene
need
Starwins,
more.
because they could be goofy and they could have like character flaws, but they were adults.
Yeah.
And you know, when the story needed to be serious, they all had like tragic backstories. So you're just like, whatever. But specifically about Captain Tyler, I'm reminded when I watched the first episode and like how kind he is to this old admiral who's like definitely in hospice care and like, you know, people have forgotten about him. And the whole first episode is basically just like him, Tyler trying to just like take care of this guy and pay his respects, and it's simple, and it ends with him on the ship doing whatever he's got to do. But like, it's just stuff like that where like you can watch the whole series and you realize this is just a kind, good person, and there's no sharp edges there. He's always just a kind, good person trying to like see the best in other people. So I had a good time with both series, but I don't know, I got inspired to dig back in. And then, of course, someone showed me a clip of Space Runaway Idion, and I was like, oh, right, that's the other stuff that was getting produced back then. Children getting their heads blown off by lasers.
I know about Nadesco because of fucking Super Robot Wars.
Oh, Super Robot Wars.
Yeah, Akito and Ruri, they're all over that shit.
She was a meme back in the day. If you open up any like anime magazine from like the late 90s, you would see Ruri. You should be all over that shit.
Really?
You know the anime fandom has a fascination with white-haired cute girls.
Lolly, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, she wasn't super lolly, but yeah, she was younger. But you know what? That would explain why they have such a big role in the games. Because they were in the Super Robot Wars. I'm just like, who are you niggas? Like, why are y'all so important? I mean, by the end of the game, I loved them. But at the same time, I'm just like, I don't think I have it in me to go watch this anime because of everything that they said that was going on in Super Robot Wars that they pulled from the plot of Nadesco. I was like, this shit must be long as fuck. Oh my god.
It's not that long.
Really? There's a movie too, right?
Yeah, there's a movie. It's like the sequel. When I watched Full Metal Panic, and I'm like, Tessarossa is just Ruri from Nadesco. It's like the same character design, more or less the same concept. Like, put the tiny lolly in charge of a giant battleship full of mecha, and like it is identical. I was like, okay, these are men of culture. They know what's going on.
It always works. It always works.
So that's pretty much it, I guess, as far as weekly watching. Do we have any fun and exciting news topics, or we get right into...
I ain't got... There's been nothing that has caught my eye.
There's one thing that is just like gets my blood boiling, but it's not... It's unfair. It's... So, I didn't realize it was this bad. So some news came out, I want to say... it was technically almost 2 weeks ago, from an interview with Togashi's assistant about the state of Hunter x Hunter. As some people may know, it's back from hiatus, but it's back for 10 chapters. And in my head, I was thinking, like, you know, that seems not much. Yeah. And if that's the case, and you know, there's still some production issues, why not just sit on it? Why move full force into it? And so Togashi's assistant came out and basically said that it takes Togashi 3 to 5 days to do corrections on a single panel.
What?
Yeah, because whatever his chronic pain is, he can't sit, and he still is in like debilitating pain standing as well, and so that makes it more or less everything that would maybe take, you know, a few hours to a day now takes 5 times as long because of his injury. And, you know, that's heartbreaking and horrible. And so on its own, I'm like, okay, well, that explains quite a bit. Some of the memes about him being stuck playing gotcha Battleship Girl games instead of, you know, writing. Probably that's because he can't do anything else but sit with painkillers on a cell phone. Yeah, and tap, right? So puts that in perspective. But the other side of it is, what do you do with series like Hunter x Hunter where creating it may be an ethical black hole for, you know, whether it's the publisher, the people involved, or the fans who really, really want it. Because at the end of the day, like, I love the series. It's one of my favorite of all time in all of its forms.
Yeah.
But if it kills the author, I don't want it. I'd rather it just be done. And let him live a wonderful life, and, you know, we'll all wonder about what could have been. But, like, it wouldn't be worth it if, A, we get a release schedule like this that is impossible to follow, and B, doing it any other way will just result in his death. And we already went through that with Berserk, so...
I just think that it just needs to be... he just needs to talk. Someone dictates what the fuck happens.
Yeah.
And, like, someone else... I mean, I know it might be him that wants to continue doing it himself. He probably wants to have, like, still control over it. So that is one thing, but if he's not dead set in having that level of control... then yeah, I would be of the mind to just basically be like, dictate to someone what happens, let them produce a rough draft or two, let you look at it. You don't have to do the corrections. And if it's the correct way, great. And if it's not, just wrap this shit up. Like, just go ahead and, like, just squash it. Cause yeah, I'm of the same mindset. If it's gonna kill you, if you're in pain to do one panel 3 to 5 days, I too would. I would have been given up, especially with the amount of money that he and his wife have. I would have been done. Your wife created Sailor fucking Moon. Like, y'all don't need money at all. But between the both of you, you do not need any more money. If anything, you should have a nurse next to you 24/7, like, waiting at your beck and call. But I understand. I don't want the world to, you know, just, like, you know, disappear without, you know, broadening upon this apparent new world that they're all on their way to.
We're not close. Rob, are you a Hunter x Hunter reader?
Yeah. I haven't read any of the new chapters since it came back, but hearing that it's going to be 10 chapters doesn't surprise me, because the last few times that he came back years ago, each time was for exactly 10 chapters each, which is basically enough for a volume. So that kind of makes sense that, okay, 10, he can get 10 chapters out for 10 weeks, and then the following year that volume will come out, which means more money coming back in. He's on his hiatus, come back, 10 chapters, volume year after that, money coming back in. So, you know, that's kind of what I was expecting anyways, even if, you know, they said it or not. But I definitely do agree with the whole health thing. One thing that I have kind of taken notice to, especially in the last year, since what happened to Mirror, the Berserk Arthur, is that I have seen across the board, at least it seems to be some of these companies having a little bit more leniency with a lot of these authors, because, like, JJK went on hiatus for like a month or so. Black Clover went on hiatus for like 3 months or something crazy. There was a recent new series in Shonen Jump called I think it's like Ruri and the Dragon or something like that or whatever. And within like that series only got to like 6 chapters before the author is already on indefinite hiatus, because within like the first like 2 or 3 chapters, the author had to take a break because of illness. They came back, did another maybe chapter or 2, another hiatus. Then by the time it gets to like chapter 6 or 7, and that's been like 3 months ago now. But we are starting to see these people taking more regular breaks and stuff, whatever, because I think sadly it took that death being like a wake-up call to like this company's like, hey, these are real people. They have health problems from being overworked and stuff. And, you know, we lost one of the greats. And do y'all want to continue seeing that? Or y'all going to let these people, you know, have some breaks and stuff?
Everyone's not Oda.
Yeah. And honestly, even with him, you know, he got a 1 month break. you know, back during the summer. Granted, he was still working on other stuff, working on the live action series and Film Red or whatever, but he at least got some type of break from the series, which I think was his first since the time skip.
Yeah.
Right.
And stuff.
I remember that time skip break. I was like, a break, nigga? What? We don't do this.
Yeah, so I like I said, I agree with if we don't get to see the end of Hunter x Hunter, so be it. I kind of came to that resolve years ago when I finally decided to dive into the manga, because for the longest time, I think it might have been maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I had decided to read both Berserk and Hunter x Hunter. But before I went in, I told myself, I was like, Robert, there's a chance, especially with Hunter x Hunter, that this series might never see an end.
Right.
Know that going into it, because honestly, where the 2011 anime leaves off, that's a pretty solid stopping point. If people watch the anime, and you never get any more past that, hey, the main story thread of like Gon searching for his dad, resolved and done. And of course, it's like, oh yeah, hey, there is more out there. If you never see it, hey, that's a solid point to end. But like I said, and I tell that to anybody that's like, hey, I'm thinking about reading the manga. It's like, if you open up that can of worms, just know there's a chance you might never see an actual true ending. But the content that you read along the way is super dope, some super cool moments, but there might not be like this big finale wrapped up pretty bow on it at the end. But it is what it is, that happens, because there's plenty of series over the years, over the decades, that have gone on indefinite hiatus that, Arthur, maybe they'll come back, or maybe that's that.
I mean, we've talked on the show, for over the last few years about different aspects of anime and manga production, the economy of those art forms, at least domestically in Japan. And we're talking about them as outsiders, but you can start to draw a thread between a lot of different concepts. The ones that come to mind, number one, is Galapagos syndrome. So that's the idea that if it's not made here in a certain way, we're not going to do it another way. So in Japan, they've been producing, manga in print for now going on 70 years. And there's a part of that genre that in the West, I think, is one of the reasons why it's so popular. It's not just the designs. It's not the fact that, like, when a series hits, it's well formulated and well backed as an IP. It's that manga is one of the few places where in art where you can feel like you're getting one author's vision, one creator's vision of a story, of characters, and you take a lot of that for granted, especially when you run into these amazing series that people literally pour their entire life's energy into. A Vinland Saga, a Berserk, Hunter x Hunter is a part of that class, but even something like Dragon Ball and Toriyama, even though he had a lot of output outside of that franchise, that these series are so personal to the creators, and even the way that they're made is it holds on to a kind of hand-spun quality that even American comic book enthusiasts who've been enjoying, series written by greats for the years, like everyone knows a Frank Miller story. But the way these things are produced in Japan is still, I won't say it's like archaic because things have changed, but it's like usually you got your primary writer and illustrator, and then like a bunch of assistants and an editor, and they will lock themselves away, in a tiny studio, and sometimes they literally just live on top of each other, and they eat, sleep, and then wake up and draw all day, proof all day, edit all day, and then collapse and then do it again the next day because they've got to hit these weekly turnarounds that realistically series didn't like. If you look at the longest running series going back to like the 70s when like Shonen Jump, was in one of its early, I guess it was technically it was a down period, but when a lot of stuff that we are now aware of today as like the primordial manga series getting created, that may have been a sustainable model, mostly because like the level of illustration that was being asked for was not insane. If you open up like a chapter of Berserk, even from like some of the earlier days, these are absolutely gorgeous panels. You know, I've watched and looked and read breakdowns of like Toriyama's Dragon Ball run, where he's like matching martial wushu and kung fu martial arts, you know, drawings and the bodies and the movement and everything else. Like, not only does it take a great mind to see it, but the actual act of producing a lot of the stuff will kill somebody if they are forced to do it for 20 years nonstop. And that's where we're at. So then you take that, then the news, I think, from a couple months ago, where Shonen Jump's physical print at the time was at one of its lowest circulation rates in 15 years. At the same time this is happening, the digital side crossed like 700K, the equivalent of copies in circulation. This is like Jump Plus and the digital versions of the print stuff that came over. So like prior there was a wall. Spy Family was on the Jump Plus side, Kaiju 8 on the Jump Plus side, and you sort of had to seek that out. Now it's all kind of been merged. And one of the things that this begs a question, because the production schedules for Spy Family, Kaiju 8, and those Jump Plus series are not the rigid 7-day turnaround on a chapter. Sometimes they could be of any length. I love Kaiju 8. I know when they go on, like, they'll give you a 24-page chapter and then be gone for 10 days or gone for 2 weeks. It's not even a hiatus. It's just the production schedule is very different. And also because it's all digital, from what I hear, they have more leeway when it comes to their own, just like scheduling their personal lives and everything else. And it begs the question, like, how ethical is it to produce manga in the traditional way going forward, when we know that, like, I can't count the number of creatives that have either literally died trying to do something or have become so debilitated that they could not continue, or broke under the pressure. I think we talked about Bleach. Kubo's experience of burnout very strongly affected that series. And that's not even to talk about
they're redoing it, or they're preparing to redo it with Burn the Witch, and he not even knowing that they are promising everyone more Burn the Witch. Like,
Whereas you look at American comics, I mean, American comics have their own major economic problems and production problems, which could be saved for another show, a different show with more knowledgeable people.
Yeah, because I was like, I don't know about that.
But the idea of like the one singular creator shepherding a character for decades is not a thing. And they tend to be, short runs, beginning, middle, end, done, and then a new team comes in and does it, Webtoons also have a different sort of production model, though I would argue that what I've heard on the Korean side, that they could be just as brutal, but they have bigger teams because they have more stuff they got to do. And then we also know about the animator challenges in Japan, that are just as brutal, and I would argue in some ways even more exploitative than what manga authors are dealing with. So all that kind of just gelled in my head when I read that article about how long it takes to do one panel. And I'm like, I love this series. I love series like that. But I don't know if I can, if I felt like my interest in something was driving a creator or the business around that person to work them to death, I don't think I would enjoy that thing or want to contribute to it. So it's just, I keep that in mind. So whenever anyone says hiatus X hiatus, I'm just like, bro, just I prefer that than death. Which is a dark way to end that conversation.
Well, Rob, what manga are you reading right now that aren't like mainstream like anime things?
Yeah. So real quick, I want to give like a just very quick shout out before I dive into what I'm reading and stuff. Just because we mentioned in passing Kaiju number 8. I just want to give a shout out to a friend of my show, at least, of the community, Lisa from The Wonder of Anime. She recently did 2 interviews with 2 people who worked on Kaiju number 8. She did an interview with the translator of the manga and the person who is the letterer. So, just wanted to shout that out. Who are both also Black. So that was another very dope thing to find out. Like, got a whole Black team working on Kaiju number 8. So just want to give a shout out to Lisa and check out those interviews for more behind the scenes stuff with that series. So manga. So, for those of y'all watching the video, y'all see my lovely shelf behind me. Some of these series that I've really been enjoying lately, one of the first ones that kind of comes to mind is a series that is also in Shonen Jump called Akane Banashi. That is a series about, it's called Rakugo, which basically think of Rakugo as kind of like a one-person stage play.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. To where basically it's just one person sitting on the stage by themselves and they're telling a whole story, multiple characters all by themselves. And, they use different inflections of their voice, facial expressions.
There have been
and
several
things like
Rakugo anime in the past few years.
Yeah. And so that one has been very dope because it kind of follows the main character. Her name is Akane, and she's basically on her own journey to become a Rakugo to basically prove that, I guess for lack of a better term, kind of getting vengeance isn't the right word, but a sort of vengeance because her father was a Rakugo person himself, and he basically was in the middle of basically doing this training to get basically to get promoted to the highest level you can be in that art form. Well, his master denied him and failed him and everybody in his class. And so her father never did Rakugo again. And so this basically is a story of her kind of taking up that mantle, so to speak, and showing like, no, my father's style was awesome, and basically her proving, his way of doing things was very dope. So, but yeah, it's been a very cool series. I think it's maybe up to like 30 or so chapters now. But yeah, so that's been one. Another series I've been reading is called Oshi no Ko. That one is a psychological thriller by the same creator who did Kaguya-sama Love is War.
Oh.
So, whole different.
Yeah.
Kaguya-sama is over here, genre-wise. Oshi no Ko is the whole other opposite direction.
Wait, did that one just start?
No, Oshi no Ko's been going for a little while.
Oh, okay.
But it's kind of picking up, or it's getting more on the radar because the digital version of the manga is on the Manga Plus app, as well as it both has. So the physical version of the manga is getting an English print early next year, along with anime is coming next year as well.
Cool. That's why I know that name. Okay.
Yeah. And so the kind of like quick rundown of that series that basically it follows, I guess you kind of say that the MCs are some twins who are a daughter and son of a pop idol. So this pop idol, and I'll give very, very, very surface level minor spoilers for this, just to kind of like explain like the general setup of it, is that the pop idol at the beginning of the series is found out that she's pregnant, but she's keeping it a secret. Well, things happen. Two characters that you get introduced to early in the story both die of different situations, and they get reincarnated as her twin children.
Oh.
And so the series follows basically these kids being raised in the entertainment industry. And like I said, it is a psychological thriller, so there are some dark things or darker themes that go along with the story, but it's kind of like a really cool, I guess kind of like a behind the scenes of like, hey, no, this is what's some crazy stuff going on in the entertainment industry, from pop idols to movie stars to everything in between. So, but that is kind of a when I found out about that little twist, I didn't see it coming. So, but like I said, I'll just leave it at that. Just a little tease of why I enjoy that series so much. And then another one I'll shout out that I've also kind of keep up with as well. It's called Shangri-La Frontier. And this
I think
is
I've heard
another
of this
one.
one. Yes.
Yeah, this is another one that also has an anime coming out next year as well. And the physical volumes of this also just started coming out. But this one is kind of more on the kind of like more action kind of gamer side of things, because the main character,
his head is a duck. Okay, well it's not that. It must be something else.
It's a mask that he wears. His character in the game has the kind of like bird head for like a mask thing.
Okay.
But that cover art definitely does catch your attention, because it's like, okay, who is this bird head dude holding two swords?
Yeah, that looks sick though. I mean, I get it, but I was into it immediately.
Yes. And so the setup for this is that the main character, he's a really dope hardcore gamer, but his thing is that he enjoys playing bad VR video games. And so he loves all the jankiness and
he's a Kuso gamer.
Yeah. And so he finds out he ends up taking a break from the couple of other games he's playing, and he ends up diving into this really popular mainstream game called Shangri-La Frontier. And so this series, I feel like anybody, if you are a gamer of any sort and you love RPGs, you love a series where you get to build your own character, they got the stats, they got the leveling up, they got the skill trees. This series has all of that. And so it does a really dope job of having the characters, the world building and stuff, because like I said, the character, he is just going through, he just dives right in. He is skipping tutorials. He's like, I don't need to hear that garbage. Just get me in the game. But it does end up kind of biting him in the butt later on, because it's like one of his buddies, like later on in the series, is like, hey, so did you do this skill or da-da-da-da? He's like, what are you talking about? It's like, literally in the first town, they tell you about this skill or whatever. And he's like, oh, I ain't know, because I went immediately to the second town. I didn't even go to the starter town. And so it has like a lot of like funny moments and stuff like that in there as well. And one of the other cool draws about it is that in the world of the game, there are these kind of like 6 or 7 like mythical creatures within the game that basically kind of like hidden bosses, that even though the game has been out for a couple of years, people have only either seen or at least learned the name of only like 2 or 3 of them. And so very early in the series, he encounters one of these mythical creatures, which is this giant shadow wolf thing. And so, but yeah, overall, super dope. Just high action series. Like I said, if you have any type of gamer bone in your body, you're gonna love it. And I watched the trailer for the anime that they put out a few months ago.
Yep.
And as somebody who has read majority of the series that is out so far, seeing all those moments coming to life in the anime, I'm like, this is gonna be.
That piqued my interest almost immediately.
Yeah.
Like some people are like, oh, the goofy head. Like I'm like, no, bro. This is some hot shit right here. If there's some good like systems underneath it, which are part of the world building in sort of VR game type stories, if they're pretty solid, I could absolutely see that being a hit. No, I was sold immediately.
So those are a few of like some of like the big ones I've been reading. Those are some of the main big ones. I'm always, so one thing that I kind of like pride myself on with what I do is finding those lesser known series that a lot of people aren't really talking about, and whether it be anime or manga, and just trying to bring them to like, hey, shine the spotlight on this little gem over here. Check this stuff out. So, because I do enjoy watching a lot of the mainstream stuff that everybody else is watching or reading, but it's something cool about finding something and recommending it and somebody being like, yo, I never even heard of that. I checked it out. That was dope. Thanks for the recommendation. It's like, okay, cool. I'm gonna go find some more stuff.
Cool. Do you have any dabbling in the Korean and Chinese markets for manhwa in both of its spellings?
Yes. So there have been a couple that I've checked out recently. One of which was something a little bit different from what I normally read. It was kind of like a fantasy romance series, and let me pull it up so I make sure I get the name right. Because this one I actually just covered a few weeks ago. Villains are destined to die.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and it's funny that I talk about this after Shangri-La Frontier, because this is another one that is sort of centered around a game, to where you have this young lady who she kind of had a hard life growing up. She lived with her father and her stepbrothers, I guess no, half brothers. Yeah, because same dad, different moms. Yeah, half brothers. But she finally, when she got old enough to get into college, she moved out or whatever. And so, long story short, she ends up finding out about this like hot new mobile fantasy romance game that everybody's talking about called I can't remember what the actual name of the game is, but anywho, she ends up playing the game or whatever, and the game has two story paths. The easy mode is where you play as this long lost daughter who she got separated from her family as a kid, and then when she became 18, her family found her. She basically got to take her place back as the princess or whatever of this royal family. But if you play the hard mode, you play this character named Penelope, she's seen as the villain, but she is basically a character who was adopted into the family because the daughter went missing. They found this girl who looked just like their daughter and was like, okay, you know what? We'll take you into the family, and just kind of like, you're kind of, for lack of a better word, kind of like a placeholder kid until when they're 18 or whatever, the real daughter is found. And now all of a sudden this girl is seen as the quote unquote villain. Well, the main character of the series, for unknown reasons, she wakes up one day in the game as the villain. And the kind of interesting thing that with the story in the early part is that the game has dialogue options, like a lot of like RPGs or games of that type, and she can only speak when there's a dialogue option. She tries to talk otherwise, but the game is restricted. It's like, nope, you can only pick from these 2 or 3 dialogue options. And those of us that play games like that, sometimes it's like, all these options are garbage.
Yeah.
Until she ends up triggering some special events within the game that allows her to turn off the multiple choice option. And now she has that.
She can freestyling?
Yes. And so now she has that freedom of speech. And that kind of starts to blow the doors open, because now she's encountering scenarios and stuff to where, okay, because what she's saying now wasn't within this box of dialogue options or whatever, it is now taking her story in this whole other direction. So that was like a really cool and interesting, like I said, fantasy romance thing that is like outside of my wheelhouse that I checked out recently. Another one that I read recently was actually what's it called? A Man's Man is the name of the other kind of like a manhwa webtoon. And like I mentioned earlier, my background is I work in IT. And so the main character of this series, he starts off the series as kind of like this like CEO of a tech company that he had worked at for 20 years and worked his way up the corporate ladder. And now he is the CEO. But along the way to his path of becoming top of the company or whatever, lots of friendships and relationships get broken and lost along the way. And so things happen, and basically he gets more or less like reset or reborn, or not reborn, but he gets sent back to the day when he starts at the company, but he has all of his knowledge from the 20 years of working in the company.
There's a series I just read now, blanks, but it was a similar concept, but for stock trading, where like a guy who had one of those like I became a billionaire in my trading stocks on my phone in the bathroom, but like similar thing where like he starts a company and then because he also lived a crappy life, like physically he dies as a result of not taking care of himself, but then reincarnates like as a stock genius. And just him, doing all kinds of like financial shenanigans, which I think is great. And then there's even another world version of that, where an econ major winds up in a fantasy setting and uses money in order to fuck with people, which I also think is really cool concept.
That's funny. But it's just been pretty cool. Like I said, as somebody who's into tech and stuff, but also because of the kind of like time period that it takes place in, it kind of takes place right at that basically right I guess think of it as like it's like the time period right before smartphones and iPhones really took off. And so he's kind of like I said taking all this knowledge and stuff and he's kind of using it to kind of like maneuver through all the different corporate politics and things like that.
So it's almost like a late 90s early 2000s history lesson about tech trends. Yes. With the veneer of like, the I don't know what you call that genre of like, it's a reincarnation story, but it's really more about like finance and what do you call that? Business shonen? I don't know. So that one's been pretty cool. So, but I've definitely been dabbling a little bit more into that side of things and stuff as well. So I've read a decent amount recently from that side of things. Gotcha. Last year, and I think maybe a little bit before that, I did a very long-ranging dive into manhwa. It was mostly spurred on because I had such a good time reading God of High School and a couple other bigger name series that were out at the time. And then, of course, that's like the Korean side. And then there's also the Chinese side, which of late I've gotten into. This is basically going to be my... it's a recommendation, but I think I've talked about this series before, but I just hadn't finished it. It's a Chinese series that's called The Sword of Glory. And the concept is that there's a father who's a mercenary. His name is Zilang, who has sort of like lost himself in war and become very good, but he's separated from his family. He has a grandfather who's a blacksmith and a son whose name is Dao who's like very young and helps the grandfather in their village. But the father is away trying to essentially like expunge a feeling of like guilt for the death of his wife. And he does that by relentlessly fighting. But in the very first chapter, we find that the war is over and he is now being hunted like a bandit because the side that he was on lost, and all of his compatriots except for one have been like, ambushed, slaughtered, and all he wants to do at this point is go home because he feels like he lost 7 years of his child's life and all he wants to do is be a father to that child. But of course, there's so much between him and there. Yeah. Simultaneously, the son is working as an assistant to his grandfather's a blacksmith, but they live in a society where only official warriors of you can think of like a martial house are allowed to carry swords, and the blacksmith's the grandfather's only dream was to have given his son, who was the father of the grandson who's working with him, a sword to take to war, because he felt like he was a failure as a father because he couldn't protect his only son as he's out there doing whatever. They don't know if he's alive or dead. So he had forged. When we enter the story, the grandfather is forging a sword that he knows is not a masterwork. It's not like the greatest sword ever. It's what he can do. And the grandson who's helping the grandfather, all he wants is to be a warrior like his dad, who he does not know. And so what winds up, the trajectory of the story is, grandfather gets murdered, the son is taken into slavery, and the father and son cross past each other but don't know it, with the father returning being hunted as like a criminal, and the son, being taken as a slave, essentially, to go fight in the fight pits. And it's one of those, like, they barely miss each other, but they don't know it. And so then the rest of the story is both of them somehow trying to come back together, and all the trials that they go through in the process of doing so. And the concept of the Sword of Glory is the name that the son put onto the sword, which ultimately got the grandfather killed because somebody, a warrior came in to have something reforged and saw that there was a illegal sword that had been named, and killed the grandfather for his pride in doing that. So the grandson feels like he got the grandfather killed. The father feels like, when he finds out that his son was taken to slavery, that he failed by leaving his home. He could have just stayed home, protected his family, and didn't do it. It is a very, very, very emotional story. It's also incredibly violent. Like in that kind of like wuxia adjacent, because it's a Murim type story of like warriors and whatever in an ancient time in China. But there's just some brutal shit in this. Yeah. Like, man, because the father Zilang is like an actual god of the sword. Yeah. But one of those, like, not like, oh, finesse, it's brutality. It's like, I have seen everything that can happen on a battlefield, and you ain't ready. You ain't ready for when, like, you talk to me about my son. It's that what's that Mel Gibson movie from the 80s where, like, it's like based on a true story, like a kid gets kidnapped and he's like being ransomed, and there's a meme of like Mel Gibson screaming into his phone, "Give me back my son!" Like that's basically like half of that of the manga, which I really, really enjoyed. So that's one that I think I talked a little bit really about. Good. It's really good. It's called the Sword of Glory, and it's not that long. It's under 100 chapters and it's done. So it's not like you're not like signing up for a 1,000 years of trying to like get through something. That's one. Jordan, we've talked about on the show a couple that are what I would call like a classic shonen. I'm not gonna go into the details about them, but like OO Parts is one that I think is like hype and follows of like a classic shonen construction, but you get all the cool production value of a webtoon. Like, it's very much in the vein of a like a My Hero Academia combined with go back to the Pantheon. It's really cool. But another one that is also in the same vein that's now been getting a lot of attention is a series called Player, which I've also recommended on the show before. And the concept behind Player is that the main character is like you're very typical, like, he's kind of a loser. He's into webtoons. That's his thing. He likes to read them. He has a favorite one in the real world called Player that he's like, I don't want to say he's like the number one fan, but like this is how he escapes getting like bullied and treated terribly, is that he kind of retreats into that story. And he makes a wish, essentially, that he could be as strong as the character, that he could be strong enough to beat a certain character in the manhwa, only to find out that the webtoon he was reading was written by a god, and that god thinks it would be funny if he pulled him out of the real world and gave him what he wanted. So he literally like blinks and he's like in essentially the final battle of a tournament against this, like, in the story, the most powerful character in the story. Of course, like, stuff unfolds from there. It's really good, and again follows like a classic shonen structure. But I would say that the power of that series, the art is fantastic. It's like a more cartoony, stylized version. It's not like a realistic looking series, but what that allows is all of these vibrant characters and creatures that are so creative. I compared it to Tower of God in terms of just the variety of what you might see in a panel. Red Devil Girl, weird winged lizard thing, a guy with a baseball bat, and whatever. Like, it's like everything smorgasbord, just a salad of really like fun stuff. And then the core of it is ultimately becomes a relationship between about 4 or 5 very varied and very different characters. And so I think that my experience has been, and I know, Jordan, you have yet to dabble so much, but you do read Tower of God, you read a bunch of other stuff, is that webtoons are an opportunity to expand the palette beyond like what is normally discussed, as far as these genres that we know. Like there's returner stories and isekai stories, but also like traditional fantasy, romance. I want to get into more of the villainess stuff, because every time Jordan comes and talks about like some of the anime that he watches, I'm like, I could consume that in an easier way if it was like through like manhwa, which is very a la carte, and you can kind of blow through it on your phone because it's formatted for the phone. So I was just curious as to what your diet had been.
Yeah.
So cool. So I guess that leaves, since we've endorsed a little bit. Jordan, did you have any recommendations at all?
Oh yeah, in the same vein of Tower of God, I recommend you don't download the game, y'all. It's a gacha game, but there's this Korean game. It's not global yet, but it's Tower of God: The Great Journey. Search that on YouTube, and the whole YouTube is in Korean. So good luck with that. But that doesn't matter, because what this game is doing is it's animating the fucking Tower of God characters, and we get to actually see how their abilities move and work. And occasionally, they're doing animated clips of certain arcs in Tower of God. So remember, like, earlier this year when I was like, oh, I saw a video of, like, Bam fighting Mazino? Mm-hmm. Like, that was from this game.
Yeah. Oh, that's what this is.
Yeah. Like, this game is literally making, like, it's insane. Like, I literally just, like, randomly came across it on YouTube. And I went and I looked, and it's like, they are making the characters that, like, we get to see them in action. It's not just, like, in your head anymore. It's, like, actually, like, envisioned and, like, put out. So, yeah, just, Wait,
it's gonna ruin lives?
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't know if it's ruining lives. It's giving me something while we wait for the next. I put it that way. And I, like, as I said, you don't have to play the game. You can just go to YouTube and look at the character showcase thing. And you can just see, oh, that's how that character would do this, or this is how this character would use this, or like blah 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 blah. It aids the imagination, especially if you're gonna go back through and reread it and stuff like that. But yeah, that's my recommendation. Go check that out. I mean, my other recommendation is very quick, very simple. It's Pokemon. Like, I mean, you already know that.
You've been on the Scarlet, the Violet, and whatever.
I've been on the Violet, and I would just like to say, as someone who has put in a lot of fucking time. Yes, the graphics suck. Yes, the frame rate sucks. This is the most fun I've had playing Pokemon ever.
That's what I've been hearing.
It's so much fun. And I think this is something that a lot of games can't even do. You have the prettiest graphics, flawless 60 FPS, and your game is shit. I don't want to play it. It's boring. I put it down after 3 hours. Every time I put this Pokemon down, all I think about is picking it back up. I don't care about the glitches. I don't care about the bugs, because the gameplay itself is that fucking good.
Damn.
That, it is fun. It's fun to play with other people. It's fun to troll other people in their fucking worlds. Like, it's fun. Like, it's actually fun. It's not just, like, the same game that they put out the 4 years before. It's open world, and it's fucking huge. And I just got to a point where the story, is, it's leading into endgame, but whoever writes the lines for the characters once, you get your little party together and you, go around, kudos. This shit is hilarious. It's fun, and when the story moves and, you start working towards the climax and the culmination, some of these one-liners, they break the fourth wall and everything. They don't give a fuck. It's actually, it's fun. It's fun. It's a really enjoyable experience. I'm not going to slight people for being I'd rather wait for them to patch it. Yeah, it'll be an even better experience, but for now, yeah, buggy, yeah, glitchy, fun as fuck, the most fun I have ever had with a Pokemon game. Like, yes. And yeah, there we go. I'm gonna leave that there. You can argue with me if you want to. You're wrong. Okay.
I would like to see like a Gama Sutra like post-mortem on the development of this round of Pokemon games, because normally the you know, if you drew a little like diagram of like shittiness of the quality of the game and fun, they usually diverge from each other. Somehow this game managed to be like one of the worst produced Pokemon games that is simultaneously, by all accounts that I've ever heard, one of the most fun that they've ever created.
Yes.
Or at least in the 3D era of those games.
Yes.
Which is absurd, but
it's crazy.
Great?
Yeah, it's like, I mean, maybe it'll like turn people around for like indie games even, basically like, this may not be the prettiest thing, but it's fucking fun and it could be pretty. Now, behind the developments, I don't know. There are people on YouTube and Twitter throwing around, this is what happened. And it's like, okay, but do you really even know what happened? Like, you don't work at Game Freak. You don't work at the Pokemon Company. So,
yeah.
Like, the truth will come out eventually. But in the meantime, in between time, yeah, like, my money well spent, really fucking enjoying it.
I'm so curious. And as someone who's had some experience in game development, I am very sympathetic to how bad games get made. When I say bad, it's just bad by the values of like the audience, right? Like a buggy game or a game that doesn't like there's some features that needed to gel that didn't gel, and the what and the why of that. I'm very sympathetic to it, but normally it's like that's a method of coping with a bad game. When the game is good but somehow is like falling apart at the edges, I'm so much more fascinated, because normally the process that gets you to a bad game puts you in that space, but the ones that get you to a good game kind of sand off those edges. So that's funny. So it's kind of how I feel about like the Saints Row series in general. Like I have so much fun.
I heard that recent one was horrible.
I've been playing it this week, and it's like I'm not enjoying it as much as, say, I think Saints Row 2 was like my favorite of the series, but like I understand that I can get through that game, whereas like if it's Grand Theft Auto, I can't get through Grand Theft Autos. I can't do it. Like it's just
never beaten one.
I think there's just something about the formula that they have for Saints Row games where sometimes shit's just broken and they don't care, and I don't care. I want the broken shit. I want to do things that are dumb and break the game. You know, like so. I'm just totally curious about that. Before we let Rob tell us a little bit about his podcasts and other things, I did want to add that while it's not a recommendation, I think like this last 10 days I've gone back and watched a lot of older stuff, and I just want to ring the bell again for like, just because something is past the zeitgeist or like it's out of conversation, like don't think that you can't go back and like watch it. Even like, you know, I was reminded of something I need to watch, which is Super Crooks, which is like not even that old, but like I watched the first episode like almost accidentally. Like I was just like, oh, I thought it was something else, and I'm like watching the first episode, like this is fantastic.
Yeah,
this is so fantastic. I love everything about this.
Pretender too.
Yeah,
Ooh,
don't even get me started on Great Pretenders.
Yeah.
So we've had this conversation with other content creators we've brought on the show, or been kind enough to give us their time, and one of the things that I think is a repeated mantra is the incentives for being a creator around anime and around this hobby and fandom is that you kind of are disincentivized from following things that might just pique your interest. There's a pressure to pay attention to like what is exciting, or at least what is creating, you know, big conversations, because that's how the industrial part of
that's how you get your impressions.
It's how it works. But like I have found that I've had the most enjoyment when I get to sink back into something that is just for me, because I can bring a lot of passion to that experience that I'm not. I mean, I still like stuff that's current, but it's a different kind of thing. Like breathlessly chasing after whatever the next story beat or the next reaction is like one end, but like luxuriating in something that's done and done. that you get to like experience on your own time without a bunch of people barking at you for an opinion about it. It's something to that. And whether you're a creator or whether you're just a fan, I think give that backlog more of a shot, because I find that that's what reinvigorates me to want to pay attention to a lot of the current stuff. So just not a recommend, just mentality.
Real quick, just because you mentioned like enjoying older series kind of like at your own leisure, there was one I came across maybe like a year ago that I found. It's called Saturn Apartments.
Wow.
This is a series I had never even heard of before I saw it, but this is it's a very simple series. I think it's only like 7 volumes long. But humanity left Earth. They live on this ring that surrounds Earth. So Earth is just nature, wildlife, whatever, and everybody lives on this ring that surrounds Earth. And the main character is a window washer on said ring. So he is a window washer in space. Super simple, basic idea, but it's an older series. It is done. It is short, and I enjoyed it. So, like I said, that just came to mind just when James was just mentioning just getting a chance just to go back and without the pressures of what's hot and new, just like, oh, here's this little hidden gem, never even heard of until I just randomly came across or whatever. So, but I just wanted just to mention that. So sorry.
No, it's all good. It's all good. So before we close things down, wanted to have a little time for you to talk about some of the stuff that you're doing, whether it's creative endeavors or just, whatever's on your mind. The floor is yours.
Yeah, so my my days, my life in general are extremely busy. Sometimes even busier than I oftentimes realize, because like I mentioned up top, I am a father of 5, 3 boys, twin girls. My oldest 3 are all child athletes, and
Nice.
they're teenagers. The twin girls just turned 13 this weekend. Oldest boy just turned 14 a few months ago. But even though on one end it's like, oh, they're only 13 and 14, they've been doing sports for 7 years already. They started when they were 6, 7 years old or whatever. And that is a side of my life that I talk about all the time on my podcast or whatever, but it's a whole other beast. I won't get into all right now or whatever, but just to say whatever, on my podcast and everything that I do, you'll get stories of what we're doing in the day-to-day of, oh, hey, kids had a game, tournament, practice, just the everyday hassles of being a dad. You'll get that with me, along with all the other things, like I said, all the manga behind me, the webtoons, the anime, and things like that. Like I said, I kind of pride myself on finding hidden gems, and not only with anime and manga content wise, but also with people. And so one thing that I've kind of dove a lot more into in this past year is having more guests and stuff on my podcast. One of which I know has been on y'all show before, Moody. I've had Mama Loves Manga, Chase the Dark Sage, Manga Brownies, lots of other people. Some of those names y'all might have heard of from within the anime and manga community, and some people I've had on you might not have never heard of. But that has kind of been the beautiful thing about what I've enjoyed doing with being a content creator, being a podcast host, is just making those connections with dope people in the community, people like both of y'all, and just so many other just cool people, and just getting a chance to have these one-on-one conversations with people, because we get like a small snippet of who a person is as we follow them on Twitter, Instagram, whatever, on social media. No matter how many YouTube videos you might watch from somebody's channel, you might not get all the full picture of who a person is and what they're about. And that is one thing that I enjoy getting to do when I have conversations with people, is just taking the time and just, diving into who they are and what dope stuff that they're doing. Because I've gotten a chance to meet people that do some freaking wild stuff. People who are artists or that are writing their own comic books and manga. People who like Bam, she's a flight attendant and like learning like what is that life like, being somebody who is always on the go and stuff like that. I've met people who, because speaking of like the whole child athletes, I met somebody from another podcast in the community or whatever. She was a whole athlete, freaking went to the Olympics. Never would have known, because she doesn't talk about that on her show all the time.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things of like when I met her and her group at DreamCon, I was like, not to assume just because somebody is tall, but it's not very often I meet a tall woman who is my height, because I'm about 6'2" myself, and she's my height or a little bit taller than me, and it's like, did you do sports? Not saying that you had to, and she did volleyball growing up through college, Olympics, all that stuff, whatever. And hey, she's just here chilling along the rest of us in the watching anime and reading manga, And so, but that has just been, like I said, just one of the awesome things that I've gotten a chance to do on my show and on my content. And so, yeah, so. If any of that stuff sounds cool, then check me out. Like I said, I am currently on hiatus, but in the short time that I have been doing this, I have done a lot.
Yeah, there's plenty to check out on his YouTube channel. All that stuff will be linked below in the YouTube, the Spotify, all that kind of stuff. We'll have links to all of your stuff. But yeah, he has stuff out that you can catch up on.
For sure.
Absolutely.
So and I don't know if we're 100% wrapping up, but I will just go and just say, I appreciate y'all again for reaching out and having me come on. That this has definitely been super fun to get a chance to finally sit down and talk with both of y'all. Y'all are super dope. I thought that before we recorded, and these hours just reaffirmed that, and both of y'all gave me more cool things to watch and read. Once I have some free time and stuff. So so thank y'all so much for inviting me on. So this has been super fun.
Well, thank you for coming.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Well, I think that about wraps us up. All that's left are the plugs.
Oh yeah. Okay. So on Twitter, while it still exists, it is anime_savants. And then on everything else, you can find us Anime Savants, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. There's a Facebook group that people are still liking. I don't know how or why, but thank you. There'll be more there. And also thank you to the person whoever shouted us out somewhere randomly on Instagram, and one of our videos just got like a shit ton of stuff. So thank you for that. My phone overheated several times, but thank you.
Yeah, you can catch me anytime on Twitter at Neural Handshake. Just keeping it easy breezy as Twitter goes down in flames. Maybe I'll migrate over to Mastodon or
Hive
something.
Social.
Hive, right? Try to get a Hive invite. Just get out of the cesspool.
Do we have to get an invite for Hive?
You gotta apply for like beta access on Android. I don't know if I don't know if that really is all that exclusive. I just think you just gotta click the button, right? Yeah,
but I did it earlier at work when I started talking about it, and because I got an Android phone, I just downloaded it from the Play Store, created an account with it.
Yeah. It's only on Android, so you gotta go.
Oh.
Yeah. For now,
it's on both. It's on Android and Apple. It's just they don't have a web. A desktop app, whatever. Yeah.
Oh,
so wherever we have to flee to, once,
we will let you know. But you
once
should
Twitter
be
is given over
YouTube.
to the forces of evil completely. It's already mostly it was mostly like that before, so it's not really like that big of a change. But like the vibes are not cool. On the other hand, I saw a lot more pornography on Twitter than I have in the last 48 hours than I ever thought. because people just say whatever. It's like if we going down.
Let it rip.
That's
Beyblade.
funny.
Also, negative kudos to that person who was spitting in people's mouths at Anime NYC. We're not.
What?
No, this is something we are not gonna do. So whatever bad juju is coming my way, I'm gonna just divert that over to them.
Yo, what the? I actually haven't seen anything about Anime NYC on my timeline.
Well, that
you'll see it soon.
Yeah. So I'm not about that life, and not should anybody else be about that life. So,
Yes.
Oh, are they alive?
well,
Let them live?
they were giving. I don't know about the people who were receiving.
Yeah, it was a chick doing it to others, to guys and stuff, whatever, and yeah.
Yep.
Wait,
By
consensually?
By request.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. See, no, there's no.
Oh.
So we're just gonna remove that energy and just push it
RSV,
over
COVID,
here.
Like,
Okay. Thank you.
Ooh.
But
So-
anyway.
As for myself, like I said, I am Rob, aka Father of Vash, and that is literal because my youngest son's name is Vash. You can find me everywhere at DadNeedsToTalk, Twitter, YouTube, all that fun stuff. Like I said, fatherhood, manga, anime, games, all that jazz. And my last note, read 20th Century Boys.
Oh yes. Cosign. All right. Well, with that, y'all, peace out.
Bye.